meditation, spirituality, and spiritual minimalism. That's beautiful, to live a more fulfilled life. That's what we're going to be talking about today with my guests on this week's episode of The Higher Self, Light Watkins. By the way, what a wonderful name.
Thank you.
Yeah. What's the story behind that? Let's start there.
Man, I have been, okay, so first of all, I'm from Alabama. So you know nobody's being called Light by their parents.
Yeah, exactly.
in Alabama. But no, it was a name that I actually took on back in 2005. So it's almost 20 years now when I moved to Los Angeles.
Okay.
There's a little bit of a story behind it. I'll give you the brief version of the story. Okay, so sure. I wasn't out looking to change my name, even though that's what a lot of people do when they move to places like LA. They rebrand themselves as something else. I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine in the farmer's market in on 3rd and Fairfax in Los Angeles. And I was telling him about all of the people, mostly guys who I'd met while I was living there, who had changed their names. So I knew this dude named Mother. He had changed his name to Mother, I assumed. There was someone else who was named Truth. And then I met this guy at this vegan restaurant called Pineapple Head.
That was his name.
That was his name. Yeah. And when I introduced myself to him and he said, my name is Pineapple Head, he said it just like that. And I was just like, whoa.
Right.
So I was telling my friend about Pineapple Head, Truth, and Mother. And I'm known in my little friend circle as the one that asks the hypothetical questions. You know, there's always one guy that's always saying, what would you do if, and I said, if you had to change your name to something like Truth, Mother, Pineapple Head, what would you change it to my buddy? And he said, Ocean. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. And he says, what would you change your name to? And I couldn't think of anything. And he got frustrated with me because I'm also notorious for not having an answer to my own hypothetical question.
Okay.
And then he starts counting down 5, 4, 3. And I just blurted out Light. I have no idea where it came from. But for some reason, the idea to go forward with taking on this new name kept percolating. And I decided, my birthday was coming up 2 weeks from that time. And I decided, in order to face my fear around doing something like that, because I don't consider myself to be someone who would do something like that.
I get you 100%, by the way.
Yeah. I decided I'm going to go ahead and do it.
Good for you, man.
I changed it and it's been Light ever since.
I love that. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. It's so interesting that we're having this conversation. Personally, I don't think I'll do it. But
yeah, you never know.
But it was about a month ago where we were just talking about my old book and the new book that's coming out, and the fact that I said that old book was literally the antithesis of the old me, mindset, grime, make the money, so forth and so on. And this was about a month ago. I must have been meditating or doing something, and I thought to myself, like, I'm not that guy. I'm someone completely different now. And the thought came to me, what if I change my name? But that's not, I don't know anyone. You're the first one that I don't know anyone who's changed their name. It literally just came to me. And then I was like, nah, I'm not going to change my name. Yeah. So
did a name come through? Like you were thinking of something specific?
Truth is because that's what I'm about. Yeah.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, man. I mean, I wasn't thinking about changing my name before, even when I brought up that question to my buddy. And I'll tell you another part of that story, that now that you said that. So when I made the decision to go forward with it, it was because I talked to another guy who changed his name, and I was asking him, what's involved in changing your name? Like, do you go to the courthouse? Do you have to file paperwork? How much does it cost? How long does it take? He says, all you do is you start introducing yourself as this, what do you want to be called? I said, Light. You just start introducing yourself as Light, and then people will start calling you Light over time. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen. Okay. So that's when I made the decision to do it on my birthday, which was happening 2 weeks after that conversation. And I happened to be teaching a yoga class on the morning of my birthday. So I thought, what better time to do it than to do it in front of 50 people? Because if you introduce yourself to one person or two people, you can still change your mind because you may not ever see them again.
Right.
But if you introduce yourself to 50 people who you see 3 times a week,
it's on.
It's on. Yeah, the train has left the station.
Yeah.
So I already knew that that's when I was going to do it. And I kept quiet in case I decided to change my mind in between that moment and those 2 weeks, that yoga class 2 weeks later. So I get to this yoga class. It's the quickest yoga class I've ever taught because I know I'm going to make the announcement at the end. And at the end, I say, guys, by the way, from now on, I'm going to start calling myself Light. And you're welcome to call me that, or if you can call me, the old name or whatever. And everyone just kind of stared at me like, okay, this is LA. So everyone does this kind of thing. They start fouling out. And I noticed that I had a little disappointment around it because for me, it was like building up. And I was expecting this big, applause or something. I don't know what I was expecting. But there was this one woman over in the corner of the room who looked like she had seen a ghost. And this is someone who I had met probably 3 months prior to that class. She came to the class maybe 2 or 3 times. And when I met her, it was in a restaurant. She was sitting right next to my buddy and I. She was with her little son, Tristan, who was 5 years old. And so she's walking towards me. I'm walking towards her and I'm getting a reaction. So I'm kind of excited. I don't know what she's going to say, but she goes, "Oh my God." And I go, "What?" And she goes, "This morning, Tristan," her little 5-year-old son, Tristan came into my bedroom and I could tell he had had some sort of dream. And he says, "Mommy, I want to change my name." She goes, "Okay, honey, what do you want to change your name to?" "Light. I want you to start calling me Light."
Wow. Beautiful.
So he had the dream that morning. I made the decision 2 weeks before. She happened to be in the class.
Yeah.
And it was obviously some sort of confirmation from the universe.
This was your path.
This was what I was supposed to do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Man.
And then after that, all my discomfort and fears and all that went away because I was like, okay, I did what I was supposed to do.
That's right.
So I listened to it, followed through, and
you got to the other side of the fear.
Got to the other side of it. Yeah.
So I want to get right into this because, as I see you, right, I think Alabama, correct me if I'm African-American?
Yeah.
Alabama, African-American, football. I don't, in
Crimson
any
Tide,
Crimson Tide, I don't think in any way, shape, or form, spirituality and meditation.
No.
So what the hell happened? When did the light switch go off? Tell me about that story.
Yeah, man. I grew up in church. Grew up in church. My
Christian,
mom,
Catholic?
Christian.
Baptist?
My mom was very, very insistent that my 3 brothers and I go to church pretty much every Sunday. Going to church was like the toll you had to pay to be able to go outside and play for the set, for that Sunday. So if you didn't go to church, you couldn't go out and play. So we would go sit there, but I wasn't into it at all. And I realized later it wasn't because of the religious part. It was because the preacher just wasn't that exciting to me. Because I had been to some churches later on as an adult where I was like, this is really good.
Yeah.
It was a very moving message and the gospel choir, but we didn't have any of that. In fact, we were the choir and we can't sing.
I got you.
I remember one time we were up there. It was we were the Watkins brothers, right? Just the 4 of us up there singing a cappella. None of us can sing.
Yeah.
And then I remember just bursting out laughing because that's how ridiculous the whole thing was. It's the whole thing. We're in this church. We can't sing. We're singing this thing. We don't even understand or care about these lyrics. Right. There's no soul to it.
Right.
And that was basically how my church relationship was, But I always had questions at the same time. What is life about? Where do we come from? What happens when you die? And no one's trying to answer those kind of questions in places like that, at least in the 70s and in the 80s. So I couldn't wait to get out of the South and I wanted to go to big cities and found myself in New York City many, many years later. And I was in the fashion industry. I was modeling at the time. And I was dating this other model who lived in Brooklyn, and she and I were going to go out to dinner one night. And I'm waiting for her. She's getting in the bathroom, getting ready, or whatever. I'm just sitting on her bed, just looking at her bookshelf, and I see this book that I'd seen in bookstores a lot in those days, and it was Conversations with God. And
I just had an event this weekend, and I said, okay, you guys go read Conversations with God. You women, go read You Are a Goddess. There's your homework assignment. Go. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a gateway book. I
man.
picked it up. I
Yeah,
started
man.
thumbing through it. And it answered all those questions I had. And then that led to the other books, and then Autobiography of a Yogi, and then, just the list, Siddhartha. And then I said, okay, this modeling thing has been great, but I have more to offer to the world than just standing in front of a camera. And I decided I was getting into yoga and I was getting into meditation. This is the late 90s. So I wanted to move to Los Angeles because that was the sort of epicenter of spirituality in America at the time.
Sure.
And so I did that. And that's when I met my meditation teacher about 2 months after I moved to LA, and then had this calling to become a meditation teacher. And then 5 years later, I'm in India with him studying to become a meditation teacher. In 2007, I come back and start teaching meditation pretty much full time.
Wow. I love that. What was that trip to India like?
Have you been?
I haven't, but I'm like,
India is bizarro world. It's the exact opposite of America in the sense that there's so much chaos, external chaos, but internally you can sense a layer of peace that most Americans and Westerners don't really have. Whereas here, externally there's order and there seems to be peace, but internally there's a lot of chaos in people. So it was interesting to experience that dichotomy. And, you have to get over things like having clean dishes when you go out to eat and not, having quiet environments. There's none of that happening over there in India. Cows are walking around like dogs. It was really cool experience.
And from what I hear, like the kids are like mutilated to
sometimes, in the big cities,
to beg for money and stuff.
Yeah. If you give one kid any money, you're going to have 1,000 kids around you within about, a few seconds.
Wow.
Because they're all like seeing who's giving money right now. So there's definitely a big divide in the impoverished and the people who have things over there. But overall, it's a spiritual culture. Like the roots of their culture is in spirituality.
For sure.
So in America, I was just saying this to my meditation trainees the other day. I was like, look, you guys really, what you primarily care about is productivity. So that's why I teach with that in mind. I tell them how meditation is going to make them more productive, more rested, more aware. Over there, I wouldn't say that speech. I would say meditation gets you closer to God. It gets you closer to becoming self-realized, because that's what they care about, right? If I led with self-realization over in the West, people would be like, what are you talking about?
You ain't selling no courses.
You ain't selling nothing.
No one's coming. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah. It's a cool place though.
Yeah. It's interesting because I find the same, we have a program called Awaken, and the end result is self-actualization. But if I were to lead with that, people ain't trying, although I will say now more than ever, especially in our audience, I'm able to say like heal. Where like a year ago, it wasn't like that. Now I'm able to say it's time to heal your life. It's time to heal your traumas and your wounds. And people are like, yeah, I'm in, And there was a time where I had to lead with money, And in actuality, what I'm realizing in this moment is because that's what I lived through. I lived through that paradigm, And I totally get what you're saying. What was it like for you? And what are some of the barriers you had to break through to become a meditation coach? And I say that not from what did you have to learn, but within, right? Like this is not something like you are on a spiritual path, providing a spiritual service. You are disconnecting yourself from the 3D. You're all in. You're doing spiritual work now. And I think the beautiful thing is for our audience is like a lot of them are like, wow, there's so much fulfillment in that, you know? Take me through that process.
Well, so when I started getting into yoga, one of the things that I was insecure about was my inflexibility. I would fold forward and my fingertips were about 10 inches from the floor. So I couldn't even touch my own toes, basically. And that was something that I was gonna use to stop me from taking a yoga teacher training, because I was like, who am I going to teach yoga to? And I can't even touch my own toes. But I decided to go forward with it anyway, and hoping that people wouldn't find out. And so it's kind of like my little secret, I felt like a dentist missing 2 front teeth who's afraid to smile, but working on a lot of people.
Yeah.
And one day I was I was out with a buddy of mine. We were on a hike in Runyon Canyon in LA. And this is like 2 or 3 years after I'd started teaching yoga. And he said, how does it feel to be one of the most popular yoga teachers in Los Angeles who could barely touch his own toes? And it kind of like, it was one of those moments where I was like, I'm looking, my ego's looking for the perfect spiritual answer to reply. And I couldn't think of anything. And finally, he answers his own question. He says, look, a wise man once told me, you don't have to beat Michael Jordan in a game of basketball in order to coach him to a championship. And that reframe really helped me in that regard. And the same thing kind of happened with meditation. Prior to me becoming a meditation teacher, I really struggled with meditation, and I didn't understand like how people thought it was a blissful experience at all, because I would be sitting there with my eyes closed and just staring at the back of my eyelids. And it wasn't until I met my meditation teacher in Los Angeles, and he kind of taught me what I now see as the minimalist approach to meditation, where you're doing less and doing least, and ultimately you're not doing anything. You're literally just establishing yourself in being. And I started having these very deep and profound experiences. So because I struggled for so many years, I was able to articulate and relate to people who had also struggled, which is most people. Most people have struggled with meditation. And my ability to kind of simplify things I consider that to be one of my unique advantages or unique skills. A, because I struggle. B, because I've always been very curious. And as a yoga teacher, I had to learn the skill of articulation because I couldn't demonstrate the poses. So I had to learn how to talk people through things, but in a simple way. And so, yeah, I would say the combination of all of that really helped me to become more effective as a teacher. And, it's like what they say, that the teacher is the most interested student in the room. Yeah. So I'm just always super curious. I still am very curious. Yeah. And if there's any way to simplify anything even more, and simplify doesn't mean water down. It means understand it at a deeper level. Right. So that you know what's most important, what's maybe important but not important to implement until 6 months from now. Instead of trying to jam everything in to the first day, just practice these 2 things and then come back, tell me how your experiences were, and then I'll give you another thing to practice on top of that.
Right. So with that said, so many people struggle with meditation. Mm-hmm. What would be the step number 1? I think the first question would be, maybe somebody's out there listening right now and they haven't decided to even start a meditation practice. Yeah. Or they don't respect it, and I say that because I'm going through this journey right now with yoga myself, where I am finally learning how to fire up all of the muscles, how to elongate, how to I'm starting to respect it. It's like a medicine journey for me, quite frankly now. It's that profound, that powerful. This morning, I was in a pigeon pose that I literally had to breathe through, and everything in my ego was telling me, get out, get out, get out. And I don't know how I did it, but I allowed myself to go literally forehead and then cheek all the way down. There was no space. And quite frankly, I don't know how I did it, but it was the journey of that, right? Of being able to control and being able to surrender to the process. Take me to the answer to this first question. Why do you feel meditation is so important for everybody?
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you meditate?
I do, yeah.
Okay. Do you drink coffee?
I only drink espressos before a big workout, when I feel like I need one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there a time of day where you just stop drinking, you would never drink an espresso past a certain time? Or
yeah, because I true story, I used to drink them if I was working out at 6 p.m., mm-hmm. I would drink them at 5, mm-hmm. and I would not sleep all night, mm-hmm. and it was horrible. Mm-hmm. So I would say past 11.
Okay. So a lot of people have that experience. A lot of people stop their caffeine consumption after a certain time, which makes a lot of sense, right? Very pragmatic, because otherwise you wouldn't sleep at night.
Yeah.
Okay. But what's been happening in our society is most people aren't sleeping at night anyway. So the caffeine only makes it worse. And what's causing people to not sleep at night primarily are stress hormones in the body, adrenaline and cortisol. One drop of cortisol is equivalent to something like 40 milliliters of espresso coffee.
Wow.
And so we get a little spike of cortisol around 3 o'clock in the morning. And if you have an excessive amount of cortisol in your bloodstream, you're going to wake up and not be able to get back to sleep at night. The most effective way to dissolve that stuff out of your body is through a meditation practice. And it's not because meditation sprinkles fairy dust on your body while you're doing it. It's meditation can actually produce chemicals that allow the body to break through that limited threshold of rest that you don't get at night and get into a deeper and more profound state of restfulness for the nervous system. So the entire neurophysiological signature of the body changes under the influence of meditation, and you don't have those chemicals that are keeping you up at night, which case you get better sleep, which case you make better decisions, which case you're more productive. See?
Which you literally heal and live longer.
Exactly.
Because you're giving your body that peace.
You get more testosterone,
right.
you get more orderly thinking, you have more presence. I mean, you have all the things that people are trying to find exogenously, but the body already produces that. And so that's why meditation is relevant for a society that wants to be more productive, is because you don't have that stress running wild. Remember those DVDs, Girls Gone Wild?
Yeah, Girls Gone, yeah.
Stress is going wild in people's bodies, and that's what's causing autoimmune stuff and, insulin resist, all the things that we experience that we don't have explanations for. Like, why is this happening to me? There's a 90% chance it's happening to you because you have more stress than rest on a daily basis. And if you have an excessive amount of stress, it caps the quality of rest that you can get. And the only way to reduce the stress is to somehow find a way to get more rest. And that's what meditation provides, is that supplemental rest that can then drop your cortisol levels to a point where you can start to sleep better. So sleep comes back online.
I love that. And that makes so much sense. And
it's practical. It's like, it's not woo-woo, it's not airy-fairy. I mean, who doesn't want to get higher quality sleep?
Sure.
Because we focus so much on the hours. You need 8 hours. It's about quality. If you get 5 quality hours or 6 quality hours, that's better than 10 mediocre hours of sleep. And that way you get refunded back 2 or 3 hours where you can go out and be more productive or spend time with your kids or do whatever it is that you want to do.
So the next question would be, if someone is like, wow, that just made so much sense to me, and I struggle with sleep, and now I fully understand, like for some people, they may have just had like a holy shit kind of moment, right? Mm-hmm. And now the next step is like, okay, they might be wondering, I want to start meditating. So what would step number 1 be?
And get the book Travel Light.
Okay.
No, I put a minimalist approach to meditation in my new book, Travel Light. And I've written books specifically on meditation that goes into great detail, but that book has a synopsis of a style of meditation that's intended for regular people. One of the problems with our understanding of meditation is we relate it to monasticism.
Explain
so
that word.
When you think about meditation, you normally associate it with monks.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And what that means is, I'm supposed to, like if you ask some random person on the street, how does meditation look? Oh, you sit with your back straight. Oh, you have your legs crossed. You sit on a cushion or you sit on the floor. You bring your fingers together. You have your shoulders back, right?
You shave your head and you have some sort of crazy outfit.
You do it for an hour, or, stare at a wall or whatever. But those are all different aspects of monastic meditation traditions, which are relevant for monks. But if you're a regular person trying to emulate a monk in meditation, guess what? You're going to have a very difficult experience. And that's why people are oftentimes describing their mind as a monkey mind. Oh, my mind is all over the place. It's because your body's not relaxed enough. So with regular people, you actually don't want to sit like a monk. You want to sit like you're watching Netflix. You want to sit with your back supported. You want to sit with your arms and your legs at ease. And so that positions your mind to actually settle beyond the sort of surface awareness where everything feels so busy. Then you want to adopt a passive attitude with your mind. So the most common instruction related to meditation is focus. Everyone's telling you to focus on this, focus on the breath, focus on your thoughts like clouds in the sky.
But that's like action based.
That's action based.
That's the opposite of
action is going to stimulate the mind.
Yeah, no.
You want a de-excited mind. So saying you want a passive attitude is it's kind of like, you know, those magic eye puzzles. You know, those they have the wallpaper like pattern, and you just look at them, and you soften your gaze, and then eventually this object appears.
Thing, right?
Yeah, that's kind of how you want to be with meditation. You don't want to focus on anything. You want to soften. You want to surrender. You want to not try to make anything happen, and that's when the thing happens.
When the magic happens.
That's when the magic happens.
But you see, it's so interesting. But that's too simple for people.
Exactly. We want to have something to do.
Right. This is masculine. This is like, you know, wounded masculine. This is not having peace. I say the same thing nowadays with like, you know, what's my purpose? You know, what you're really asking is what's my job? Right? Your purpose is you're living it. You're living life. You're breathing. Right? And if you want a job, here's the job. The number one job that any human being can have and can be a part of if they want to find their purpose, go find your heart. What you're saying is the same thing. Go soften, right? Get out of here and just relax and soften and allow. And when you do that, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah. And I say in that book, you know, instead of worrying about your purpose, just start following your curiosity shamelessly, right? Just the things you're naturally curious about. But do it shamelessly, because the reason we don't do it more often is because we're afraid of what other people are going to think about me spending time researching, you know, ancient war strategies or whatever. And I'm supposed to be focusing on my work thing here.
Right.
For instance, there was this guy who was on my podcast who was working at a coffee shop, and he was a big fan of music and music composition. And he went to school to study classical music and Gregorian chants and Beethoven and understanding the time period. And he had a baby. He and his wife had a baby. And he would be at home with the baby at night after the coffee shop job, just scrolling through Instagram. And he's like, there's got to be something more productive I could be doing with my time. And he heard Kendrick Lamar's first album, To Pimp a Butterfly. And he was like, this is really interesting. What would happen if I dissected Kendrick Lamar's album in the same way that I used to dissect Beethoven and these Gregorian chants back in school? Because no one had ever done that before. And so he decided to start doing that. And then he decided, let me record myself doing this and talk about the different, not just the music composition, but also the time that this album was produced in and da-da-da-da. Anyways, he created this podcast called Dissect that he would work on at nights and in the mornings. And again, it's hard for him to justify this to his friends and his family because he's a new father.
Right.
And he's working at a coffee shop. This is not exactly, you know, he's not living the dream here, but he's obsessed with the more he researches these songs, the more obsessed he becomes with the genius behind his creation. And long story short, he ended up launching this podcast, and it's got so much soul in it. It goes viral. And then Spotify reaches out to him and offers him the first exclusive podcast deal with a creator.
Wow.
And it became this podcast known as Dissect. I think it's in its like 9th season now. But
wow.
He quit the coffee shop job. And so I say, follow your curiosity shamelessly, because it's not going to be easy, and your purpose will find you.
You know what's so funny, man? You just described, you just put simply into words, which I appreciate this because I do this for people. You just did for me what I did with my life. Because when I started my healing journey, I wanted truth. Mm-hmm. I wanted the truth about life. I wanted the truth about God. I didn't want to believe anymore. I wanted to know, you know. I wanted to know the truth about where we go afterwards. And like, all of these questions, they were always, I can remember, back when I was religious, I'd have these moments where, there was so much struggle in my neighborhood, in my family, and the people that I was around. And I always found a way out of the struggle, Back then it was just financially, but I always found a way, and I would do it by, like, I'd walk down a street somewhere and I'd see like a wealthy neighborhood or something, and I'd be like, I'm going to live there someday. As a matter of fact, I'm going to live there within the next 2 years. And the next thing you know, I'm living there within the next 2 years, right? And it was wild. And then I'd go to church and people would go, hey, because I was all in. I was all in with religion, right? And people would, pat me on the shoulder and say, wow, God has blessed you. And then I would have these moments in my mind where I would go, was it God or was it me? Because I'm the one that thought the thought, And so that's where my curiosity began. And that's, quite frankly, where I found my purpose is by going all into those deep, uncomfortable, scary questions that I wanted to find answers for, And the second thing I want to mention is, by the way, I love when I asked you, how do people get better at meditation? And you said, go to my book. And I honor that in you. And I say that because people ask me all the time, well, how do I heal and how do I balance my masculine and feminine? And I say, come to awaken. Because it's the truth of what I know to help people. And there's something so beautiful about the confidence in that, where you're able to say, like, do you want to get better at meditation? Yeah, then it's in the book.
It's also about context, like I could give a couple tips here, but it wouldn't serve your audience in the way that saying, I know it takes some effort to go and get a book, but that effort actually is good because you want some sort of exchange of energy, of attention to open you up to receive. And that's one of the first things you learn as a teacher is that there's got to be some sort of exchange on the other end in order for that person to get the value out of whatever the teaching happens to be. Because I've spent so many years, man, just giving stuff to people and just seeing it go in one ear and out the other ear. And then you see people who really put something up on the line and they pay so much more attention to it. And so I do that for myself.
Sure.
Like my first book that I've self-published back in 2014, I struggled, man. And it took me about 3 years of stopping and starting. And talk about ego, like the first version, the first draft, oh my God. I thought it was the best thing ever. And then I went back and looked at it 6 months later. It was all ego, just all what I know, you don't know. Let me teach you. I'm going to show you.
You need me.
You need me.
Yeah,
exactly. So I started back from scratch and then, got some other help and da-da-da. And so finally, I got to the point where I was so tired and sick of just thinking about this thing and not giving myself permission to take it to the finish line that I reached out to my buddy. And I gave him I drew up this contract between he and I. And I said, I would like to make an agreement with you that I'm going to finish this book by such and such date, which is like 2 months from that contract. And if I don't have it ready to be uploaded to, it was called CreateSpace at the time. Now it's Kindle Publishing or whatever. Here's a check for $4,000 made out to you, dated for that date. You have to cash it and you can't use it for anything having anything to do with me. These are the excuses I'm probably going to try to use. You have to ignore all of that.
I love that. I love that. You know what? So I'm relating so much to you because I had that same exact moment. And I love that you just brought that up because these are parts of like my former life that I forget about, that honest to God made me who I am today, that I forget to share. But I remember I had that same scenario when I was in real estate. I was a real estate agent. My buddy Jeff Quinton from Ocean City, New Jersey. Jeff Quinton and I was trying to break through in the business. And he said, okay, you got to make, X amount of calls per day, 3 hours a day, so many contacts. And every day we have to check in. And if you don't check in, and, I was struggling at the time. He goes, you want to get this out of the way and you want to fix it? I was like, yeah, I'll do anything. He goes, anything? And I go, yeah, anything. He goes, all right, cut me a check for $25,000. I said, what? He said, write me a check for 25,000. Or it might have been 10,000. I don't know. I think different now, but it might have been 10,000. Cut me a check for $10,000. And I go, okay, I'm in. Because I was always that kind of guy. And he goes, if you ever skip one day, right, over the next 30 days, I'm cashing this check. And at the same time, I'm going to meet you in the same place. I'll send you a check. And I was like, okay, I think I did more business. I did
all
more
the excuses freed up, right?
All the excuses, they were gone.
They were gone.
I did more business in the next 90 days that I had done literally in the previous year combined, because you're right, because I put my neck on the line.
Yeah.
And so many people, you know, when it comes to an event or something that can change their life, they won't get out of their comfort zone.
No.
They won't.
Well, they're not being honest with themselves. And I know what that's like.
So do
to
I.
lie to yourself.
So do I.
And I say discipline is not about willpower. It's about honesty. You have to be willing to say, I'm not going to get up at 6 o'clock. I know I'm saying in my head, under the best circumstances, I'm going to wake up at 6 every morning and work on my project. Sure. I know it's not going to happen.
Sure.
There's nothing in my past that illustrates that I'm going to be doing that. So because I know that that's not going to happen, let me set up a stopgap. You know, let me arrange a time that I feel it can work. And maybe I can't do as much as I am dreaming about, but maybe I can do a quarter of that, but I can do that consistently every day. And then let me put something at stake, because I know that if I don't have anything on the line, I'm not going to follow through.
Yeah, for sure.
And once you do all that, man, like you say, the excuses go away completely.
Yep.
And you just focus on, okay, I call it in the book, the freedom of choicelessness. I don't have a choice. I've given myself a freedom of not having a choice.
I love that.
So I only can move forward. It's basically you're burning your own boats.
That's right. That's right. I love that. I'm going to read it. That's for me?
That's for you,
okay,
man.
I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Hey guys, before you continue listening, I wanted to introduce you to the sponsor of this episode, Athletic Greens. I decided to give AG1 a try because I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great, boosts my energy, and supports my immune system. Especially for someone like myself that fasts all day, I take it in the morning before starting my day, and it makes me feel incredible. It makes me feel like I'm doing something good for my body. It also helps me save an enormous amount of time, and it makes my life so much easier with just one scoop in the morning. So it makes it a very seamless and easy daily habit for me. Just one serving of this stuff, AG1, supports my long-term gut health. It has 75 high-quality vitamins in it, minerals, and whole food source ingredients. So if you're looking for a simple and cost-effective supplement routine, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of their vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. So just go to athleticgreens.com/Danny. That's athleticgreens.com/Danny and go check it out today. One final question I have for you. You know, I do a lot of these podcasts, and I feel people's energy.
Yeah.
And your energy feels very light.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
And I would love for you to speak about, you know, what the change of calling yourself light, what that's done for you. What has that meant to you?
It's a good question. I don't think anyone's asked me that question, at least not in a long time. So I have this friend of mine. His name is Leon Logothetis, and he
Greek?
goes, yeah, his family is Greek. He's British, though. He's actually from the UK.
Oh, okay.
But he goes by the name The Kindness Guy. He's got a great story. So Leon used to be a broker here in London, and it just wasn't fulfilling. And he was like having suicidal ideations and depressed and all this, but he had everything in the world materially.
Yeah.
And he decided to leave that behind, and he moved to America, and he bought this vintage yellow motorcycle, and he called it Kindness One, and he drove it around the world purely on the kindness of strangers, which means he didn't take any money with him. And he had to go up to people every day and get someone to agree to put gas in the motorcycle, to feed him 2 or 3 times a day, and to put him up at night. And that's every day.
What polarity? Like, wow.
And it took him 6 months to get around the world back to Los Angeles. He had to even go to like a cargo ship and persuade them to let him bring the motorcycle onto the cargo ship, and you know, the whole thing. Anyways, he ended up documenting it, and it's called The Kindness Diaries, and it's on Netflix. So he's known as the kindness guy.
Gotcha.
And I met him back in 2016 because he spoke at this event that I was helping to produce. But the reason I'm bringing that story up is because he can't be an asshole. He can't go around, as the kindness guy doing asshole type of stuff.
Right.
And I felt like, one of the side effects of light, calling myself light, is that it holds me to a standard that I wanted to live at. But at the same time, I knew that people would have an expectation when they heard that name, and I didn't want to portray something that I wasn't. So it actually called me forward to become more authentic, to be more myself, but also to be not myself in the sense that, I'm just going out telling people exactly what's on my mind or anything like that, but who I would like to have in my life, like be that person, be the helpful person, be the patient person, be the compassionate person. Because I think we all have that within us.
For sure.
If we feel safe enough.
Yeah.
So put myself in the best possible condition to feel safe, which requires a certain lifestyle and, making certain priorities and committing myself to a certain degree of service. And that way you cultivate all of that from within, because that's the only way it's going to be authentic.
Yeah.
Is you have to make it a part of your lifestyle. It can't be some isolated act here and there. You have to do that with intention and with consistency. So it all just kind of, like you say, man, it all just kind of blended together. I feel like I'm in the flow. And I can't imagine not being called light.
Because it's who you are.
It's just who I am at this point in time. And look, I may decide next week to change my name to something else. I don't know. I never would have thought this was possible. But the main point is, and this is something I got from Michael Beckwith, he says, don't listen to what I'm saying, listen to what I'm listening to. Because people see guys like you and me or Beckwith or whoever, and they go, oh, I need to be like Danny. I need to do this, that, and the other. I need to have a podcast. I need to have, the events or light. I need to live out of a backpack or whatever. But it's not about that. This is your journey. This is my journey. That's his journey, right? We followed the curiosity in the way that it spoke to us. But there's the connective tissue is that there's this communication that we have with something that's bigger than ourselves. And when you can really get quiet enough to tap into that, however you tap into it, and you hear what's coming back your way, which is, hey, go spend some time in London, or hey, start this thing, or hey, hire Casper or whatever.
Right.
And you just go with that, you're not going to have any certainty. The only certainty is that I hear that that's what's coming through. And so going with that allows you to kind of take that leap of faith, and you end up being right where you're supposed to be. So if I hadn't done that hundreds of times, if you hadn't done that, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. No, for sure. Thank you. Thank you for this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah. How do people get a hold of you, and then remind them again about the book?
Yeah. The book that I just came out with, Travel Light, it's on spiritual minimalism, which is minimalism from the inside out. And the sort of central hub of my work is my website, lightwatkins.com. And I'm on the socials at lightwatkins. And I got to have you on my podcast, man. I want to hear more about your story.
Yeah. Where's it at?
My podcast?
Yeah. Where do you film it?
I do it out of Mexico City. So
Dude, I'm there.
Well, you can do it online. We don't have to come.
No.
No.
We're gonna do it now. You gave me the excuse. I've been telling Jen, right? Like Jen has never been to any part of Latin America.
Really?
And I'm like, babe,
that's a great place to start with.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. It's close to us. Yeah. I'm in 100%.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, you're about to be another father, fourth time father.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
what the trippiest thing, man, is thinking that I might eventually be the father of like 6.
Yeah.
To think that
you're getting the vision, downloading.
I mean, I'm just allowing. I'm just opening up to it, Yeah. But I just remember after my divorce, or during that marriage, the conversation of was there, and everything inside of me was like, don't you dare.
Yeah.
Don't you dare, because there's.
How did you and Jen meet?
Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, Instagram.
Who slid up into whose? You don't have to talk about that.
No. I'll tell you. I mean, it was very. I was just coming out of my first ever ayahuasca retreat.
Oh.
And back then, I was literally neurotic about finding the one. Where's the one? Where's the one? I mean,
Did you get the vision in the IO ceremony?
No. No, that one was all about me releasing control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what that one was all about. Yeah. Scariest, most beautiful experience of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But after, I'm like, I said, I want to get like a conscious chick, I didn't even know what I wanted. I want to get like a conscious chick. What do conscious chicks do? Like they do yoga and shit, So I swear to you, I think what I did was yoga babe. I think is what I did. Yoga babe. And I'm scrolling and I
Wait,
see.
you typed in the key tags?
The hashtag.
Yoga babe?
Yoga babe. Yeah. True story. She's over there laughing right now. Right. And sure enough, I don't think I've ever told the story on the podcast. Sure enough, I remember the first picture I saw.
Uh-huh.
There was this sense of like serenity in her face, like peace. Yeah. And yes, beautiful on the outside, but I can't explain this, but it's like through the picture, I could feel her inside.
Mm.
And I was like that. And it all started from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, there's a lot. But it was 3.5 years until we actually finally met.
Wow.
We just became friends. And my first ever psychic experience was with her.
Huh.
Where it was like Source was giving me messages for her. And then I'll never forget, I was like, are you the one? And I said, if you're the one, send me the word yes right now. And I hadn't asked her a question or anything.
You were just thinking that.
I was just thinking because we had a moment where it was so profound and so powerful, we both stopped breathing.
Mm.
I didn't breathe for like 2 minutes. We were so like in it. Like
she was on her end, wherever she was.
She was in London, wherever. It was all through text. And we were like in each other's energy, which I didn't even know what that meant back then. And my mind is going crazy. Like I had never felt this before, this connection, to the point that it wasn't even a connection. There was no separation. It was like oneness, right? And I go, are you the one? And I said, send me the word yes, if you're the one right now. Mm-hmm. I didn't ask her a question or anything. And she sent me the word, yeah, like that.
Just out of the blue.
Just out of the blue. And I got like,
wow. That's like me and my name thing,
Was it? Yeah. No, man. And there was just so many moments like that. So many, through meditation.
She wasn't responding to anything. She just literally messaged you, yeah.
No, we were in conversation.
Oh, okay.
But it was like a minute later, and she said, yeah. And then there's a lot of stories that. Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, even having the baby. I was told in a ceremony, you're going to have a baby. It's going to be a little girl. It's going to be with the woman of your dreams. That little girl is going to be the culminating healing of your heart, your mother's heart, your grandmother's heart. And when she got pregnant, I was like, just trust me, it's a girl. She was like, how do you know? I go, just listen to me, it's a girl. Sure enough, it's a girl.
Beautiful. Love it.
Yeah. So
we're looking forward to diving in more.
In Mexico City.
Yeah.
For sure. Let's do it. Guys, I don't ever do this, but this is definitely a book I recommend. Light Watkins, Travel Light. I know you can feel the energy. I know you can feel the light right now. I know you can feel the peace. And that lightness and that peace is something that, we all have within us. And it really feels like this book is going to help make it simple for you to reach and to unravel. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And we'll see you next week on another episode of The Higher Self. Thanks for watching this week's episode of The Higher Self. If you heard something in this week's episode that caused you to think maybe, just maybe, there was a higher potential for your life, maybe there was a potential to earn and receive financial freedom, to attract the relationship of your dreams, or to improve your health, that's what we specialize in. We help wonderful human beings like yourself to unravel all of the limiting thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you've been living through so that you can finally tap into your life's truest potential. If you'd like to talk more about that, we invite you to join us on Instagram or Facebook and email us the word discover more. And when my team sees that, they will reach out to you, send you the details of how we could help you on your pathway to a life of abundance, fulfillment, and creating the absolute life of your dreams. Message us right now the words discover more now on Instagram or Facebook, and we'll see you soon.